Hi, welcome to our ProAV Academy series on tech terms, where we sit down with Alister Chapman and chat through some of the technical terms that just come up again and again in this industry. Alister is one of the best people I know at explaining complex technical concepts, so hopefully, just by casually chatting with him each one of these terms through, these videos can just help clear up some of the confusion that might be out there on each of these terms. Today we're talking about unwanted artifacts like Moiré and Aliasing and what they are and how to avoid them. So let's go over some of the very common image issues or artifacts that might occur. One that you see talked about a huge amount is aliasing, or the patterns that occur because of that, like Moire. What's actually going on there?
Well, that's generally caused at the camera side, at least, by a mismatch in the resolution of the sensor and the resolution of the image that the lens is able to project onto that sensor. So if the image that's falling on the sensor has a lot of very, very fine details in it, but the resolution of the sensor is below that, it won't see those details. But as the image moves, that detail might then fall onto a pixel and we can see it, and then it keeps moving and then it falls in between the pixels and we can't see it, and then we keep moving and it's back on a pixel again. So those little details will appear to come and go depending on how the sensor moves and things like that. And that can create all sorts of weird patterns depending on how those fine textures and details line up with the pixels. You know, so you might get some fall on pixels, some don't, some fall on pixels, some don't, and you could end up with stripes through your picture. Or in the case of a diagonal line, a very common one is that the diagonal line, instead of being a nice diagonal line, appears to go in steps, or worse still, in uneven steps, depending on how it all lines up with the pixels. So what generally happens at the camera level is that a filter is included between the lens and the sensor that deliberately softens or defocuses the image that falls onto the sensor by a very controlled amount, so that that is very slightly lower than the sensor resolution, so you can never have that mismatch. And that filter is called the optical low pass filter. And it's especially with Bayer sensors, a really critical part of the optical chain. Now the problem with this that we see in a lot of cameras these days is that the optical low pass filter will be designed for the maximum resolution that the sensor operates at. So in the case of a FS7, FS5, the optical low pass filter is designed for 4K because that's the highest resolution that the camera can shoot at. But in some of the trick modes that these cameras have now, especially in slow motion, the sensor has to be read in a different way. So you can't read 4K at 120 frames per second off the sensor. So instead of reading 4K, it's read at 2K. So the sensor effectively then becomes a 2K sensor instead of a 4K one. And that optical filter designed for 4K is no longer optimally matched with the way the sensor is operating. And as a result, you get aliasing again. Now the other artifact that you get with these Bayer sensors as well, very commonly, which is a result of aliasing, is Moire. And Moire is aliasing in the color channels. So this is again where we're not able to resolve details in the color properly, and we get patterns in the color. And that manifests itself as a rainbow of colors across maybe a finely checked shirt or something like that, and that's known as Moire. So they're both, aliasing and Moire, both hugely related. They're part of the same problem, which is a resolution and a sampling mismatch. Generally dealt with an optical low-pass filter, but one of the problems that we see with a Bayer sensor is that a Bayer sensor has a higher resolution in luminance, in the black and white, compared to color. So if you really want to squeeze 4K resolution out of your 4K sensor, your optical filter is going to be matched for the luminance side, but ineffective in the color side, which is why we see colored patterning, because of the lower color resolution of the sensor. And that's where we get our Moire issues in the sensor. It's not, however, just limited to cameras. So, you could capture at 4K and then in post-production just downsample it to 2K perhaps, or lower. And again, if we don't electronically filter that when we do the downsampling through perhaps a little bit of a blur or something like that, then we can get aliasing in the downsampled image. So you've got to be really careful through your whole chain. Obviously, camera needs that optical filter to make sure that we're not oversampling, undersampling with the sensor. And then when we're doing any downscaling, and a really common one actually is shooting in 4K and delivering in HD for broadcast television, and doing a very simple, very crude, just chop the pixels in half down to HD thing.
Just line skipping.
Just line, yeah. Well, and that's exactly what effectively happens, is you skip every other line. So what was in the in-between lines or the in-between pixels is no longer there. So if there was say you were shooting, a very finely striped shirt, where you've got the stripes happen to line up, white stripe, black stripe, white stripe, black stripe, every other pixel in 4K, and you were to convert that crudely down to HD, just by getting rid of every other pixel, you'd end up with either a black shirt or a white shirt, if it was all perfectly aligned, or if that shirt in reality is going to be moving around, going to go from splodges of black and splodges of white. And that's exactly what aliasing Moire is. So what tends to happen, fortunately now, is most edit suites, most edit software doesn't just do such a crude down conversion. It will blend pixels as it down converts. But it is worth looking at what's going on, especially actually if you're doing anything, you're converting down to interlace, because you get even more problems then, because of the nature of interlace breaking things down into two fields, which effectively each field is even lower resolution. So sometimes you can actually end up with a better end result by very slightly blurring or defocusing that 4K before you down convert it. You need like a 2 to 3 pixel blur before you down convert it to HD, and you actually then your HD looks better. It's very counterintuitive that blurring your 4K is going to give you better HD, but that is the reality sometimes. So aliasing Moire, it's about balancing the amount that you sample your image for the resolution that you're going to deliver it at, from camera all the way through to post.
Thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. Keep in mind, we also do a whole range of ProAV Academy workshops held right here in our UK showroom, where we cover a whole range of topics, from audio to post-production, camera techniques, business tips, lighting tips, and many more. The main aim of these workshops is to help our customers learn and develop their skills. And there's something about face-to-face training which can just never be replaced by videos like this one. So if you're in the UK, please do get a ticket from the link down below and join us for ProAV Academy.